Welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings Here. In an inarticulate version of inmendham. Yeah, sorry, just can't come up with words today. It's a trend. So, I was just thinking about how to put, there's this rather simple argument I'm making, and it has two sides to it from my perspective, but it's all the same thing. There's the physical facts of our existence, and I'm fighting or defending some notion, the notion that most people have it wrong, and the scientists aren't as smart as they think they are, and it's a physically simple universe, and we're just a emergent complication. And the trick is that has a significance in the sense that you can write some simple rules about consequence. So you can write some simple rules about the fact that the universe is just made out of mass with motion, and that you conserve the amount of mass moving. So you can have big things moving slow and little things moving fast, but it always has to be the same amount of stuff moving. And then you could argue in the ethical side that the universe really doesn't have anything meaningful going on until you create something that can feel. And then all of a sudden the universe does matter, because what happens in the universe will affect the feeling thing. And the idea is that there should be a minimization, of the cost to benefit, the efficiency, and you could argue that the rule should be, well, why bother with any of that harm stuff, because you don't need anything it buys, and that's the truth. You don't need to make a need that needs to be satisfied. So if you just get rid of the vulnerability, you have solved the problem that's created by the existence of something that can feel, by just basically saying, let's not make any more of that, because it just needs to be fed. It just creates the potential for a deficit. It doesn't really create any potential for an asset, because there's nothing the universe needs to have fixed. It's not broken until you put something breakable in the universe, so to speak. So that would be one of the simple rules, is that we're just a bunch of unnecessary fragile glassware that you don't need to put in your covered wagon, because it's just going to create disappointment, especially if you have like bottles of anthrax or something. It's all downside risk. Anyway, so the video I intended to make was just some video making this argument that, yes, of course, this is so simple, and I have found that you can't, it's really hard to make these arguments, because people are just belligerently, resistant to something that doesn't, make them feel good about being them, I guess, or being in the world they are assuming themselves to be in, are participating in something they think is just fine. I mean, you could argue that like most Nazi soldiers didn't really know what the whole agenda was. They were just proud to be, good citizens, fighting for the integrity of their country that had been maligned, and had been a loser. And they were showing that they're not losers, and some kind of simple thing like that didn't really have to do with a whole bunch of bigotries and tortures and all of that crap for them. And so they were just living a lie. They were fighting for a cause that wasn't what they thought. They thought they were fighting for clean streets and such, and they were involved in something worse than that. And so this is they're going to be hard to sell, that they should be traitors to their homeland, their motherland. you know, it's going to take some work. And it turns out it's, you know, it's a lot of work. And I'm not very good at it, apparently. And so that's just sort of what I was talking about was, you know, this is so simple. You know, I recognizing our evolutionary origin, that we are just bugs. We can use our intelligence to understand the truth, or we can fantasize about adventures and, you know, we can aggrandize the story into some great purpose for ourselves and glorious victories that aren't really in the cards. And the rules are really simple. Again, you know, just arguing about these simple things like everything you do means that somebody else is not going to be able to do what they were going to do if you weren't in the way. You know, so every time your car's parked in a parking space, it means somebody else didn't park there, and maybe they got killed because they parked somewhere that ain't so good. Turns out, you know, that there's all these effects, and you know, they're part of your existence. They're part of accounting for your existence. And there's just too much, you know, we're paying too much for getting too little. The whole evolutionary plan is to torment, kill, abuse, enslave, exploit, you know, a whole bunch of organisms, you know, to glorify the victors, you know, that get to survive, you know, playing the game. And in a lot of cases, you could argue the people who survived the plague weren't the nice people, you know, they were the shitty people. So this evolutionary thing works in kind of, you know, it's a poor definition of fitness. I mean, I'm sure that all the people that were doctors and all the people that cared about other people and how tried to help and all that stuff, they paid a price for their, you know, pursuit of kindness. Kindness was going to get you killed, and just a fact. And running away, you know, and doing it, you know, not paying any, you know, attention to the needs of the civilization would be a winning strategy. So there's lots of cases where that's the truth. And the whole gang warfare thing doesn't have much legitimacy. You know, lots of evolutionary battles where, you know, it really wasn't a fair fight. You know, 5,000 of them against one kind of things. And, you know, so you can make all these arguments, you know, about how we have a corrupt origin. And, you know, we are, you know, we have these extra features. We can do this thinking thing, and we can either do it to find the truth, or we can do it to glorify bullshit. And the argument is that most people are wallowing in bullshit. And just as most scientists really aren't functioning in the universe that exists. They have these delusions about the entanglements and the singularities and the black holes and the this and all this nonsense. And it's not connected to the real reality. The reality isn't a bunch of sparky little wavy woo particles. There's no bent space. Well, you know, whatever the fuck that could possibly be. So those are all mistakes. And the same thing has happened on the ethical side. I don't know, probably I should come up with a better word for the running of the machine, and just observing and analyzing its efficiency. And it's not that hard to figure out that, you know, you don't kill two people to save one person. You don't torture two people to prevent torture in one person. I mean, those kind of simple math. And, yeah, and that's all I've been defending for years. And people just don't want to hear it. You know, I can to some extent, understand how it's not a great story, that we basically suck and we've just used intelligence to scheme, and deserve hasn't had much to do with it, and all of that kind of crap, and we're all guilty of crimes of convenience, and they all add up to a pretty substantial murder of reason and justice. So something like that anyway. But since it's inarticulate day, I don't know if I've been able to even say it correctly, good enough to even frame this stupid picture, let alone get into any details of making the argument. Something like that. So, I keep hitting buttons that aren't the right ones. Anyway, so let's play some of this and move along. But just this, look, it's simple. The rules of life are simple. The rules of the mechanical physical universe are simple. And this is, all of this complexity stuff doesn't have anything to do with anything reasonable. It's not going to go anywhere. I mean, creating birds that collect blue things, and then create birds that collect red things, and birds that collect green things, and then you can make all the subdivisions of all the different colors. You can make all kinds of silly and complex things, and they have absolutely no use. And they can do no good. They can only open the door to a lot of waste and tragedy. Yeah. There's no positive state. There's just less negative. There, to communicate what really is just, it's just a pretty simple description of the circumstance, Right, so you're just talking like kind of this Newtonian three law kind of thing, and just done better than that, let's just argue. And, just some clear statements about the circumstantial facts. Again, the idea that, this sensing organism is just a reward and punishment mechanism. And frankly, it's really just a punishment mechanism. It's, once you have the whip, you have the power to create the delusion of a good day where you don't get whipped. Like somehow there's positive power in just removing negatives. And that's one of the things people shouldn't be fooled by. That it really is not a victory. Okay, it isn't an absolute or real good just to be in a less bad state. Kind of an important statement, I think. They're stuck in the Helen Keller without a language. So that's just talking sort of about animals. So they have the capacity to do this creation of value, that is having a feeling and having a welfare stake, a good day, a bad day or a worse day. So I guess I shouldn't even say the words good day. I should just always recognize that there's just casinos, and there's just losing, and it's about how much, minimizing the losses. But the casino's always going to win in the end. The negatives. Yeah, train of thought just, whoops, fell off the rail. It's a rough day. For no good reason. It's just rough inside, Yeah. And climb up the wall of the maze and see the maze. Yeah, so that's, so isn't that all, that's the whole agenda, is to have some argument about, well, let's agree that we shouldn't be living ignorantly and bouncing off of walls. We should take all advantage and try to understand our position. And so then let's say that let's acquire some knowledge of how the world works, get yourself a little bit educated. That's climbing up out of the maze, and so you understand evolution, you understand some physics, you understand some of the science, the controlling and manipulating you, some of the psychology even, and all of that is giving you an image of the game, and you can't see it from inside the game. You can only see it by creating an abstraction that allows you to get out of the urgency of I need and I want, and get into some place where you're just analyzing how need and want and satisfaction and torment is distributed. And then it becomes really easy to see it's just a meat grinder. You're just feeding a machine that just feeds on destruction of and waste, a waste engine. Do it carefully. This is a game that is serious, and kids really aren't taught that. Yeah, so I guess that's one of the key things, is the whole agenda is being run by all of these really ignorant, common denominator, simplistically stupid kind of silver lining kind of philosophies. All this almost infantile optimism bias and crap like that, and that there's way too little prepared people, kids being oriented to thinking about their life in the true context. And so it's really easy to just become focused on you're a contestant and you're playing for your victory, and there's nothing else to be concerned with. And it's really easy to fall into that trap. And I think that's what they basically create, is people who think there's no harm in, it's as if it was a video game, that all the people you shoot and all the things that happen don't happen in any place that's real. Okay, it's all not real prices paid, when of course it is, kind of thing. Because I say I could like them so much, but it's I needed them quickly. I was quickly dependent. So I was talking about the vice of cigarettes. So many little mistakes you make in your youth, so many miscalculations, and you really can't talk to kids, and you can't talk to, when do people actually grow up where you can talk to them? And I guess that's part of the argument, is that most people never grow out of their ignorant notions, and they'll never pay any attention, to some argument that might instill in them some sense of slow down, pause, caution and careful. Risk aversion. It's just not something easily instilled in human beings, where I found it without any trouble at all. Something you have to be mindful of. So anyway, so that's a simple statement that ends up being a complicated statement, in the sense of saying, look, it's a simple argument that we got here through evolution, and evolution just makes these things, these machines, and it really is kind of unfair and cheating to pretend that you can put these machines in all these different little categories. Like they have some sort of function. Okay, so the idea is their function is just the crude mechanism, the obvious consumption of the energy. So you're almost back to the physics argument. And that's all it's about, is systems that get fed continue to exist. Systems that don't get fed don't exist. And it really isn't a merit system. Fine. And the catch is that everything's never just fine. You get things and you find out, so yeah, so little analogies and just this idea that we have this perception that we can gain some sense of immunity, or we can fly or whatever, and we never really get off the ground. They're all just big hops. You can have a nice hop where you get off the ground for a little while, but it's the need just keeps reoccurring. So I can use the example again. You get you buy the dream car, and you're happy for 3 days, and then by the 4th day, all of a sudden you're noticing that it looks smudgy. Oh, it's got a scratch. Oh, it's and all of a sudden it's just another thing to irritate you. And you're off pursuing the next perfection, the daydreaming about the next plateau. I mean, everybody should be pretty controllable by fear. And so, yeah, I don't know exactly what the point is I was making, but yes, that is, frankly, I reasoning your way out of it, okay, is necessary to some extent to make your life survivable, but there should be a great deal of horror, and trepidation about your circumstance. You're going to get killed, and you don't know exactly how you're going to get killed. There's lots of things to sit there and worry about and be afraid of, and that's not a good circumstance. And obviously people have all kinds of distraction mechanisms to keep them from focusing on that reality of their existence, and the fact that they're going to get their share in all likelihood. They're certainly vulnerable to pulling this shitty ticket. So far, not a great start to this video, right? Because I just want to get to the yeah. So I should be able to put some of this in simpler terms, in terms of just it's both simple ideas. The mechanical universe runs on these simple rules, and likewise this idea of a should, and what there is to do in the world in terms of value. It's also simple, that the only thing that really sticks out as having anything like value is the feelings generated by organisms complicated enough to generate feelings. It's a bizarre again, people can call it an illusion. It's a mechanism. Your brain's creating, it's generating this perception of a person in this environment of intensely real feelings. And obviously they're not real in the sense that they're not real like a mountain, but they're real in the sense that they're physically circumstantial, and there's a difference between the circumstance of you feeling good and feeling bad. It's a different pattern in your brain, so it can be identified as a physical event. It just doesn't look anything like what it feels like. It doesn't translate from the feeling universe to the looking universe. So there's a way to say that. But yeah, so that shouldn't be a gigantic stumbling block. It shouldn't end your capacity to think, because it's almost impossible to think about some things, like, well, how big is the universe? I mean, those thoughts can do nothing but confuse you. So, but the good news is it doesn't matter. Meaning success as these matter and these don't matter. This torture matters, this torture doesn't matter. That's so whatever. Yeah, that's just a vegan argument kind of thing. Just this argument that it's just nonsense. It's really ignorant and stupid, to think that the sensations you're having need to be good ones, and it doesn't matter what kind of sensations the thing you're exploiting or abusing or using is having. It's just really illogical. It's a violation of the conservation of the minimization of torment and torture, and your obligation to be part of that traveling the minimum road. It's got this very low birth rate, down to 0.7. So I was talking about the fact that it's all good news so far, in the sense that even though I'm failing, the themes I'm defending are winning in the real world, in the sense that yes, people are choosing to be anti-natalist anyway, if not ethicist, and in terms of preserving some sort of system of perpetuation. They're not really involved in saying, I'll put my money into the make more of it machine. I'll invest in making more, let's put it that way. And so that's the good news, is that smart people do tend to see the fact that there's value at stake, and that the mechanism doesn't just make gold, it makes shit, being controlled by the rulers. Now the money, is... Alright, so then I was just talking a little bit about, you try to imagine where the future's going, and people, it's hard to really imagine some sort of, what were they called in that movie, The Time Machine? Murlocs and ignoos or something. I forget what they were called. But anyway, this idea that there's going to be people living the nice, beautiful life, and then people living the slavery, drudgery life, or that there's going to be, the same kind of ignorant, versus educated and all that stuff, because it is all... once you hand somebody a cell phone, I use this sort of that argument, they're not going to go back. They're not going to say, "Nah, I don't need it." No, they're going to recognize comfy chair, and once they sit in one, they're going to say, "Gee, this is a lot better than a rock. Yeah, I want one." Clearly, it can synthesize the behavior of a human, and what if they could install... Yeah, so it's a little bit about AI, kind of, that we're synthesizing, we're mocking ourselves almost, because yes, we're creating fake versions of humans, and it's all very good at just mimicking and all that kind of crap. But what if you really created the real thing? It's in the sense that you've created all of the nonsense mimicry part, and then you actually do throw a feeling in there. And then it would struggle to explain to you what its feeling was, right? Just as we have a hard time trying to put it into words. But it would be able to say, I know what I'm feeling is damn important. And yeah, it seems kind of obvious that I guess, all the other feeling things are also important. I mean, mine aren't the only special feelings. I mean, that's just so simple and obvious. It's just amazing that you have to argue that. Amazing to me, anyway. From both ends, from the people who dismiss it out of their own vanity and selfishness, and then the ones that do it for some intellectual reason, the pretense of some intellectual reason that, well, it's not really happening, because it's in your brain, and your brain isn't part of the universe, and so it's not really happening. Kind of bullshit. I haven't met people that are really above it. Let me just put it that way. I don't know. So I was just talking about being able to be more than just the monkey, and how hard it is. And I concede that even though I have all of this, whatever you want to call it, philosophical stuff. This ideology. There you go. Because then you can ridicule it if you wish. I'll use the word ideology. I have this ideology, and even I can't live by it, in a sense, because the selfish nature is just so hard to get past. So, I was just sort of talking about if I was to steer, if there's a shark coming, and if I can get away with it without being obvious, and I can steer the shark that way or steer the shark that way, by looking like I'm trying to do something heroic, it's likely, I'm going to do it for my own self-interest. It's likely I'm going to feed you to a shark rather than I'm going to jump in the water. And even though I know better. It helps to know better. I'm saying it's more likely I'll not be an asshole, but it's pretty hard to imagine how I'm not vulnerable to being an asshole. Vampires. Yeah, so that's sort of the story, is you're just really saying it's, there's no ethical ground for vampirism. Okay, you just can't be taking from something else to feed yourself, and if it's too much, if it costs too much, then you can't buy it. Simple rules. A lot younger, they're going to take it a lot more seriously. Schooling, they're going to take their education. So then I just went over all the other subjects I have failed to be able to gain any ground with human beings at all, and they're just so obviously, huge benefits to be gained, and so the whole education system is so archaic. It's such a waste. All this live performance art is just nonsense. Of course it can be done through, videotape it once and just replay the tape to everybody. You don't refeed a professor to mimic the performance, to do it live on stage. No, you put the movie camera on and you film the goddamn thing. And it's just so much cheaper and so much better, and especially better if you are paying the right thing. You shouldn't be paying teachers to force kids. You should be paying kids, to willfully and with glee and pleasure consume. So make it a very good paying job to be a high school graduate, and you'll have lots of high school graduates. Just a fact. My whole attitude as a kid would have been radically different if I understood a real incentive to learn. You get to own a house. You just have to pass this stupid test with these silly little questions on it. Well, I'm going to figure out how to answer the questions. Kinds of shenanigans and fraud. But, that's what... There's too many people invested in the shenanigans. It's kind of another example where they always create some little fakey thing and say, it's the same experiment. We already tried that and it didn't work. So they have had things where, like, they give kids a chocolate bar or something. It's just just completely unmeaningful incentives in terms of, being something that's really going to catch a kid's eye, and they're going to say, oh, okay, yeah, I'm going to take that seriously. But it's like you could almost imagine that if you did have a world where you gave a kid $50,000, all right, to acquire a high school, to pass a GED, and that's, 1/3 of the amount of money the education would cost if you use the traditional system. And you have to pay this tiny amount, so society would pay a tiny amount for having a rigorous testing system, something that can't be cheated. But anyway, tiny amount of money, a few $1,000,000. But anyway, and so all the rest of the incentive is all for the kid. Okay, the kid gets the payment. You could just imagine kids mocking each other in the street when they wasted any time bouncing a baseball or a basketball or any kind of bullshit. You'd be like, Well, you're really throwing it away, aren't you, jackass? You know, that kind of thing. I mean, and then if you added something like, you know, any civilian crimes, you know, would reduce the amount of money you're going to get. So any crimes you commit against civilization would, you know, make you'd be compromising your own winnings. Okay, you know, hugely powerful in my opinion. Just it would make a dramatic difference in the quality of humans in terms of maturating and taking their life seriously much earlier, which would be a huge advantage. Because what you know, the habits. I mean, just like languages and other things, as they're easier to acquire in your youth, much of the physiology and mechanisms are going to be acquired in youth. And you'll be stuck with them your whole life. Something like that, anyway. All right, one more little bit we'll play, see what it is. And, yeah, I'll try again. Yeah, that's it. Yes, I'll try again. So anyway. So yeah, not the best video, you know, but whatever. Just, you know, not the best conversation, whatever you want to call this, sermon. You know, they all can't be winners. You know, but that's sort of the point. Is that obviously, you know, I find it, you know, acceptable, and it should have worked, and yeah, I just miscalculated in terms of understanding the barriers you have to get through to get into people's heads and, you know, play with their reasoning enough to get them to admit where they're talking shit and cheating. That's it. Yeah. Because that's what, you know, that the scientists are cheating. You know, they won't admit any of the truths about how, you know, made up and farcical their science is. They keep pretending it's all been proven and it was all well established by something, and, you know, they can't defend that position. And it's just little obvious things. I mean, you just say, well, you know, they never did these simple experiments. You're dropping 4 pounds 1 foot and 1 pound 4 feet. And you say, well, should they do that experiment? And they won't even concede they should do it. You know, they won't even say the word. Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, let's pay $56 to get that one done. You know, they won't even admit the simplest things. You know, and it's so just obviously it's the agenda is their. They don't want something else to be true than their fantasy, and that's the threat. And I just didn't think people were all that glued to bullshit. But that's the point. You get glued to something, and the hope is if you don't get glued to bullshit. So I guess I could just say I had the advantage that I got glued early to something that wasn't bullshit. I mean, I have to say, you know, evolution was a huge idea, and I got glued to it early, and it did change everything I looked at. Every bug I looked at, every observation I made about the world was in this context of understanding that these are also machines on Earth. They're also Earthlings. I guess that's the way of looking at it. My eyes were already looking and seeing those stories as being part of my story. The story of being an Earthling. Something like that. Anyway, moving along. And so till the next time, whatever. Yeah, so yes, that's the best I can do. I mean, brain fog, I guess it's a real thing. I'm just, you know, shit. You know, I just feel really like all the ideas are really heavy and you have to lift them to get them out. Oh man, it just seems like a lot of work today. Anyway, until the next time and such and so forth.